No brushing your teeth during the show. Good morning. This is not John McDonald, but this is J Mac and the Bear. This is Tom Duggan, filling in for John McDonald. And if I practiced that a little bit more, I could have done that whole big, really fast thing that he does at the beginning of the show that even I don't understand. But I gave it my best shot. Tom Duggan, also paying attention on Saturday from 10 to noon here on WCAP, filling in for John McDonald on J Mac and the Bear with George Zaharoulis. As we welcome the, I'm supposed to read this, right? Okay, good morning, this is John McDonald, but this, trust me, it's not John McDonald. As we welcome you to the best hour of machine gun radio, the J Mac and the Bear Show. The J Mac and the Bear Show is brought to you by Coffee Can. By the way, I love Coffee Can. Right down the street from my office, right on Merrimack Street in Lawrence. Not only do they have great coffee, great breakfast sandwiches, I go there for lunch. You go through the drive-thru, they have great turkey sandwich. And say hi to Sherry Trafficante Can, who's a very good friend of mine. I think we went to high school together. And her husband, Frank, is phenomenal. I love Frank. And Justin, by the way, their son Justin, who works at Coffee Can, I think he's up at the Hampton Beach location, very big fan of the J Mac and the Bear Show. So make sure you take care of Coffee Can because they take care of us. It's also sponsored by Big Decisions LLC. I'm John McDonald. I'm not John McDonald, I'm Tom Duggan. And along with my co-host, Mr. Bear, George Zaharoulis. Hi, George.
Hi.
That's it for the show, folks. Thanks for coming. Good night.
We also encourage you, our listeners, to call 978-454-4980 and talk to us live on WCAP, where everyone gets it.
Now, normally, John McDonald, I've been on the show a couple times as a guest. I know he loves calls. I hate calls. And just what you know right out of the gate. If you want to call in, you can. I'm not going to go so far as to prohibit it. I'm just letting you know my preference. I would rather talk to our guest, because we've got an amazing guest here today, George. I don't know if you had a chance to chat with him before the show. But if you pick up the July edition of the Valley Patriot, which is being delivered right now as we speak, we wrote an editorial this month about the plight of David Duckangelo, who's a candidate for Secretary of State here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And what he is running into is something that I've had a really tough time over the last 10 years with, and that's getting public documents. We've sued the city of Lawrence. We're in the process of suing the town of Salisbury. We're also very seriously considering bringing a court action against the Secretary of State's office, though we want to give them a little bit more time to try and comply. Okay, good. Dave Duckangelo has decided to do what we did. He asked for public documents, and he didn't get them. First, they said, he sent in a public records request. Now, Mass General Law, Chapter 66, is the public records law. It's a fake law. It's not a real law. This is what happens in Massachusetts when you have a one-party state. It would probably be the same if they were all Republicans. I'm not saying this is something isolated to Democrats. If you had a state that had all Republicans, they'd be doing the same stupid stuff. But what is happening here in Massachusetts is they create a law that makes it look like they're doing something. But in reality, when you read the law, they're not doing that at all. But it allows them to give sound bites at election time to get votes, so they can pander to certain groups. So what the Democrat Mass Legislature did was they passed a law, Mass General Law, Chapter 66, called the Public Records Law. Here on WCAP, we call it the Fake Public Records Law. Because what the law says is, if you live in Lowell, you live in Tingsboro, Drake, Tewksbury, you go to your local town hall and you say, I want to see some documents. I want to see the public documents that show how much our city attorneys are making. I want to see their expense reports. I want to see, did they submit for a hot dog at lunchtime, or did they pay for the hot dog themselves? Well, under Mass General Law, Chapter 66, it says that public entities have to turn those records over within 10 days. Here's the problem. There's nothing in the law that says what happens if they refuse. So in other words, if you rape a woman, that's really bad. The cops are going to come to your house, knock on your door, and go, bad, David, bad. But then they're going to leave because there's nothing they can do to enforce the law. And that's what the Democrats in the state legislature have done with Mass General Law, Chapter 66. I own the Valley Patriot newspaper, and I deal with public records every day. I deal with 42 cities and towns that we deliver to and that we cover. And so what David Duckangelo did is he said, in the last election, Secretary of State Bill Galvin ran these fake public service announcements. And he ran them all the way up to and including on Election Day. And you, the state taxpayers, paid for those public service announcements. But there's another law in Massachusetts that says candidates can't use taxpayer money to campaign 30 or 60 days out of an election. If you remember, our impotent Attorney General Martha Coakley persecuted Tim Cahill for running lottery commercials while he was running for governor. Even though Tim Cahill wasn't in the commercial, and even though Tim Cahill's name wasn't mentioned in the commercial, she prosecuted him for using public dollars to campaign while his name was on the ballot. Here's what Martha Coakley didn't do that year, and this is why we have Dave D'Angelo with us today. What our impotent Attorney General didn't do that year was she didn't prosecute Secretary of State Bill Galvin, who was in his own commercials and whose name was prominent throughout the entire commercial and ran not only 30 days before the election, but up to the day before the election and on election day. On election day, I was sitting in my office and I look up at the TV and there's Bill Galvin in this fake public service announcement telling you, you know, you really should vote on November 9th. I'm Bill Galvin. You know Bill Galvin, the guy in the ballot, Bill Galvin. I'm Bill Galvin. This is really a public service announcement to remind you to vote for Bill Galvin. Because I'm Bill Galvin and I'm here in this commercial, Bill Galvin. That's what it was about.
You're overdoing it. You're overdoing it.
Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit, and I'm going to give you every chance you can now, George.
No, I don't want to get into that because that's ludicrous.
Well, it's not ludicrous.
I can see why you pick on Martha Coakley. Because she screwed up again.
Well, she's impotent. She doesn't know how to get anything done. She's a very smart lady. I've met her. She's a very bright lady. And she's actually a very personable lady when the cameras are off. But she is impotent. She cannot do or has not done her job since she's been elected, ever. Willie Lantigua is still a free man walking around today because Martha Coakley didn't bother to do her job.
Good guy.
Willie Lantigua?
Yes.
We're going to get along just great, Judge. So anyways, Martha Coakley didn't prosecute Bill Galvin, Secretary of State, because they're pals. She did prosecute Tim Cahill. Why? Because as a Democrat, he decided to leave the party and run for governor against Deval Patrick, and it was payback. You're right, George. Dave D'Angelo, how is that for a build-up? Did I get most of that right?
No, you forgot one thing.
What did I forget?
The 19 years.
Of? 19 years of?
Bill Galvin.
Bill Galvin. Oh, right. He has been Secretary of State for 19 years. That is correct. Yes.
Tommy, good morning. George, good morning. WCAP listeners, thanks for having me. It's great to be here in Lowell with you today. Yeah, I mean, most of what you said is accurate. You know, one thing I will try to emphasize, though, is we're asking for public documents. The people deserve to see the public documents. We, my campaign, is trying to ascertain just when Bill Galvin did appear in these spots. Just produce the records that show
that's the 19
how many
years.
Yeah, we've gone back for 19 years since he's been in office, and we want to know, when did you appear in these spots? How many times did you yourself personally appear?
Are you looking for 19 years of records? Or?
Well, we're looking for the culmination of... I mean, I know if my wife buys a sweater for $50,
right,
it troubles me that your state government doesn't have the records on hand like that to be able to produce such a significant expenditure. I don't know what's worse, the fact that they can't produce the documents easily or the fact that they won't give them to us.
Yeah.
Both of them, to me, are reprehensible, and over 19 years, there was very significant spending done, both to produce these ads or PSAs and then to air the PSAs.
Right.
Do you have anything to back up your statement?
I'm trying to get the documents. That's why I'm asking.
Well, you must have had some work done.
Well,
don't you have your own investigators?
I've been an active participant in public policy and politics in Massachusetts for the past 20 years. So I certainly remember seeing these public service announcements.
Has he been doing a good job?
I think it's been nothing to see here, folks, and just keep on moving on. And that's so much of the trouble with Beacon Hill. He's been there 20
what is he
years.
supposed to be doing?
He's supposed to be doing his job. He's supposed to be making it easy.
Job? You're running for that position.
Sure. Let me tell you a little bit.
To be on the other side. What do you think that job entails.
Yeah, sure. So
I
let
think
me
that's a
explain.
great question. What is the job of Secretary of State? People should know that.
Let's detail it to the listeners out there. So as Secretary of State, there's a couple of really important things that you have to do, and then some of the things that are kind of mundane. Let's start with the most important. As Secretary of State, you're the Chief Elections Officer for the state. That means all of the local elections that go on, you have to certify. All of the statewide elections that are held, you have to hold them. All of the federal elections that are held, you have to oversee. So, and you're the last person to be able to make a determination on an election result, and you have to certify all those results. So, Chief Election Officer is a very important position for the Secretary of State. The other important position that the Secretary of State holds, among many others, is the Chief Information Officer for the state. That means handling of all public records at the local level, at the state level, any other records that the Secretary of State has to certify and then maintain. And I think on both accounts, he's kind of, fallen down and dragged his heels. And the thing that worries me the most, George...
Wait. You say you think. Have you ever asked them for a PD 140?
PD 43s, absolutely.
No, PD 140.
A PD 140, no, we haven't asked for those.
Okay.
But rather than inside baseball, George, what is a PD 140?
It's usually the financial condition of the state.
Financial condition of the state. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I really rely on the comprehensive annual financial
I'm
report
confused
put out
about.
through the
Can I just cut you off one second? I'm confused about something, George. You seem very hostile. So
He's a Republican. I'm a Democrat.
Okay. All right. But can't we all just get along? I thought Democrats were about being liberal and open-minded.
I'm very open-minded.
Okay,
George, my
right.
message is appealing to Democrats, by the way. I am city councilor at large in Malden, a place where there's only 6% registered Republican, yet I was able to be a top vote getter there in a lot of the wards.
And Democrats should love you, Dave Duckangelo, because you are disabled. And Democrats, if you're in a certain category, it doesn't matter what, you could be Hitler. If you're black and half Eskimo, half lesbian, they're going to love you. Right, because Democrats do balkanized, the Democrat leadership does this balkanized thing where if you're part of a certain group, you're always right, you're the best.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a stereotype smasher in that way.
On the position that he ran for,
yes,
it doesn't indicate whether he's a Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, but trust me, the local Democrats know if you're a Republican running locally.
Yeah, but we also have it here in the city of Lowell.
I know, we got
Most
Dick
of the
Howe.
municipal
We have Dick Howe who goes
elections.
after every Republican that runs for, like, library board of trustee.
Most of the municipal elections in the state are nonpartisan, I'll give you that. However, I've been chair of the city committee for the past 16 years.
Which
I worked for the Malden Republican City Committee. I've worked for Weld, I've worked for Salucci, I've worked in the state senate. I'm a known Republican operative. It wasn't fooling. I wasn't trying to fool anybody by running and saying I wasn't a Republican. I'm a proud
do you
Republican.
think it's a popularity contest because you're such an outgoing person?
Well, I think my message.
They fell in love with you.
I think my message appeals to people because the voters appreciate both on the local level, and I think it's going to translate to that in November. That really what I'm trying to do here is take politics out of it and make it about holding government accountable, running government more efficiently. And I think if we can do that, so many of these challenges that we face as a state can be remedied. The solutions aren't the issue. It's having the political will to institute the solutions. That's the thing. That's what I'm going to do when I'm up on Beacon Hill. I'm not afraid of upsetting the apple carts up there like Bill Galvin, like most of the others on Beacon Hill, who they don't want to ask questions. They just shrug their shoulders and say, oh, well, everybody appears in these PSAs, and it's just the way it is. Well, it shouldn't be that way. We have a government, and we need to hold it accountable. It needs to be a government of the people, and what's happened is you have somebody like Bill Galvin, who has spent his entire adult life, his entire professional career on Beacon Hill, and he's become this institution up there. I'm running against the face of Beacon Hill. He's been in his current office for 20 years.
Well, he's doing a good job. People like him.
Well, let me flip the equation on you, George. Where is your evidence that he's doing a good job? What is he doing a good job on?
I'll give you evidence that he's not.
Well, no, but I mean, George,
well,
you and I have had tons of airtime, and I want George to at least have. I mean, he's the co-host of the show. He should have as much time as he wants.
If I knew we were going to go in that direction, I would have kind of put it together.
Yeah.
But let's go with the local elections, or any election, or the verifying of elections.
Sure. Certifying.
He's certifying the elections. Has he done it? Are they proper? Has anybody questioned those election,
Yes, there are numerous elections that have been questioned.
did they carry, did they go forward?
Some of them are still pending in court.
Wonderful.
I can tell you one thing, George. The Valley Patriot exposed on the front page of our paper 2 years ago outright forgeries on Willie Lantigua's nomination signatures. We filed that complaint with the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State's office did nothing about it. They did absolutely nothing about it. They should have thrown those out, and they should have thrown Willie Lantigua off the ballot when he was running for re-election. But because Willie Lantigua was riding around with one bumper sticker on his car for the last 10 years, going all the way back to before he was a state rep, that said Bill Galvin, Secretary of State. And when he was Secretary of State, worked hand in hand with Bill Galvin. So when those forgeries not only came to light, we actually took a picture of the forgeries and put them on the front page of our paper, and then sent them to Bill Galvin's office. Crickets. Crickets. We got nothing out of that.
And as Tom indicated,
my understanding is that unless the individual who has supposedly signed the paper comes forward, nothing can happen. They accept it. They accept all signatures.
So what crazy Democrat legislature would create a law that would say, even if it's patently obvious that one person signed 12 names, unless that person psychically knows their name was signed and files a complaint?
It comes down to the local level.
George, I'll do you one better though. Let's just explain this.
Okay.
The manner with which these procedures are happening, these handwritten signatures on pieces of paper, that hasn't changed in 100 years.
Great.
He's been there 20 years. Technology has evolved right past him. I'm going to modernize that office. I'm going to bring in technology. I'm going to make it so these things go, most of these problems go away, because we're going to use technology that's going to take care of most of it. Right now, if you want to find a lot of this stuff out, you have to go and pour through physical paper records. That's, in this day and age, really? Really?
I'm not running for Secretary of State, but I would argue that they do that on purpose. Because that way, when someone like you comes along and says, I want all the documents on how much of our tax money you stole and used in fake PSAs while you were on the ballot in violation of the law, they can say things like, oh, well, gee, it's Ripley's. Who could believe where they are? I'm going to have to check my storage area down in North Andover. I don't know. Maybe it's in this other room. We have to physically look for physical paper. And that costs a lot of money, Dave. We're going to have to pay a guy $104 an hour to go look for those records. And by the way, you're going to bear that cost as a member of the public.
Well,
you raise a couple of good points.
Don't forget that those are the original documents, and they have to secure the original documents. I'm sure they can microfiche and put everything else.
Yeah, but they're not doing it. That's the problem.
Well, I'm not so sure they're not.
All right.
Well, you raise a couple of different issues, and let's address them. And again, it's to me a failure of leadership in that they haven't instituted the technology upgrades that need to happen there. You know, one of the things that Bill Galvin hasn't done, to go back to what he hasn't done, is another one of the responsibilities of Secretary of State is to run the corporations division. The corporation division, for anybody who's listening out there, anybody who owns a business in Massachusetts, is faced with 40 pages of fees. And those fees just keep increasing and increasing year after year. That has cost jobs.
Who increases those fees?
The Secretary of State.
But it has to be an act of legislation.
No, it does not.
Yes, it does.
No, it does not. The Secretary, in most cases, it does not. The Secretary of State promulgates those regulations. Are there a few that are set in statute? Yeah, there's a few. But by and large, those are promulgated by the Secretary of State, and he keeps increasing and increasing them year. There's 40 pages of fees. $500 to register your corporation a year. Every year, even if one comma on your application doesn't change. That $500, if you're a small business that's a corporation, that could be used to buy a new piece of equipment, to give an employee bonus, for education, for whatever the case may be. That's inhibiting business here in the state.
$500 at the Valley Patriot gets me 4 more pages every month. So I could take that $500 and buy 4 more pages for the July edition, and I could take that 4 pages and I could do more public service announcements about what's going on at your local library, what your local police are doing. And I'm just one business. Imagine if you had a coffee business or a pizza business.
And the argument we hear back is, oh, it's just the cost of a cup of coffee a day. Well, that argument is old. It has to go. We'll bring a new leadership back to Beacon Hill in this November 2014. If you want to keep on keeping on, yeah, then shrug your shoulders and nothing to see here, and we'll continue losing kids at the DCF, and we'll continue with this compounding problem, and we'll continue not allowing our brave servicemen and women overseas to vote the same way that you and I are doing by secret ballot. They are not allowed to vote by secret ballot. It's outrageous.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was our lead story in the last edition of the Valley Patriot. Hopefully you read it. Sounds like you read it. We're going to take a quick break. I think Austin wants to take a quick break, right? Can you play that Elizabeth Warren clip coming back from the break? Because it's a staple of my program on Saturday, and I just kind of want... You know, this really isn't about Democrat, Republican for me anymore. I left the Republican Party. I'm so sick of the Republican Party. And I'll give you my reasons on my show on Saturday, but I want to play the Elizabeth Warren clip because I need the public to understand that most politicians, certainly I think the Democrats are more guilty of this than the Republicans by and large, but overall, most Republicans are full of crap. Most politicians are full of crap. Freudian slip there. I'm really mad at the Republican Party. Most politicians are full of baloney. And you know how you know when they're full of baloney? When you ask them a question about their own position and they can't answer it or refuse to answer it. So when we come back, I want to play the Elizabeth Warren clip, and then I want to ask Dave D'Angelo what he will do. We've heard what he thinks Secretary of State Galvin has done wrong. Now I want to know, what is he going to do? What is going to be his position if he's Secretary of State? What is he going to do when he hits the ground running? What is he going to do differently? And maybe what will he do that is the same? I'm sure Bill Galvin has done a number of things that are really good things. And I want to hear about those things too. 978-454-4980 and J. Mac and the Bear. George Zaharoulis is the co-host.
Will pay for equal work, and he voted no. And he had one chance to vote for a pro-choice woman to the United States Supreme Court, and he voted no.
Okay, should that be the only litmus test for a Supreme Court? I mean, if somebody's a right-wing Republican with their pro-choice, would you vote for them?
The key is that Senator Brown has taken some good votes. I have no doubt about that.
You can't even answer the question.
He's a husband, a good father, and he's taken votes that are not good for women.
But could you answer my question? If there was a right-wing Republican who was pro-choice...
The person he voted against was Elena Kagan. Elena Kagan is from here in Massachusetts. She was the Solicitor General of the United States. That's the top attorney in the United States. She appeared multiple times in the United States Supreme Court arguing cases on behalf of the United States. And she was the nominee to the United States Supreme Court.
Do you think he voted against her because she was pro-choice?
I don't know why, but what I do know is he had one chance to vote for a pro-choice woman from Massachusetts who was eminently qualified to go to the United States Supreme Court, and he voted no. His voting record is losing.
Get her away from him! Get her away!
He just doesn't want to.
He's asking real questions. He's not part of the liberal media. Get her away from Duggan. He's asking real questions. He's not accepting us just repeating over and over and over a non-answer. Come on, Tommy, gotta go. Gotta go rearrange my sock drawer.
Welcome to the best hour in radio, the J. Mac and the Bear Show. I'm George Zaharoulis the Bear, and my co-host John McDonald's getting a haircut. But with us we have a great stand-in, Tommy Duggan of the Valley Patriot, and also our guest today is a fellow that's running for state, Secretary of State, Dave D'Angelo. And we're having a little bit of a conversation. We're having lots of disagreements. Tommy Duggan and I are coming to blows.
I think they're going to call the cops during the break.
Maybe you can't see it because the radio doesn't have a picture of it. But we're really going at each other relative to the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate for Secretary of State. And I disagree on a lot of things that Dave has said. And we're going to talk it out a little bit, maybe after the show or something. So back to you, Tom and Dave. And now you mentioned that there was a situation. Oh, first of all,
yes,
I want to congratulate the University of Massachusetts of
Lowell
for their.
Sitting in the studio today with us is David D'Angelo. He's the candidate for Secretary of State. He's running against Bill Galvin, a man that I call on my Saturday show the Darth Vader of Massachusetts politics.
Oh.
And I know that George has to take the other side because
No,
you
I
know.
don't have to. He's a good guy.
Yeah, well, have you met Secretary Galvin?
Yes.
Have you had any interactions with him as a business person in the Commonwealth? Have you dealt with his office?
I have dealt with his office.
Yes. And how did it turn out?
Very good. A lot of stuff I found right online.
Oh, excellent. So you didn't really even need to deal with his office.
Yeah, well, that's his office, isn't it?
Online?
Yes.
I'm confused.
Well,
Oh, you're saying
it's not impossible.
You got the stuff online from
his office.
for what they put up. Okay,
Yes,
I just misunderstood what you were saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I thought I was speaking English.
No, you were. I just misunderstood. I'm not as bright as people make me out to be sometimes. Tom Duggan here and Paying Attention with George Zaharoulis for J-Mac and the Bear Fling in for John McDonald. I'm going to be his co-host next week on The Pulse. We're trying to get Deb Goldberg, candidate for state treasurer, in so we can ask her why she thinks, any kind of gay issue has anything to do with being a state treasurer. Because every time I go on Twitter and every time I go online, every time I go to an event, I hear her talking about gay rights and mass equality and all this other stuff. She's running for state treasurer. I'm trying to figure out how those two square, so we'd like to have her come in next Thursday.
I think you get the wrong candidate.
Okay, is that possible?
It's probably the young lady that's running for AG.
Well, I know she definitely does, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm pulling a Democrat ballot. So I'm going to be voting in that race. I'm going to be voting in the governor's race, and I think I've already decided who I'm voting for governor. I want to give Martha Coakley at least a shot to get my vote, but I've been torturing her on Twitter now for the last month, and I can't even get an answer out of her or any of her people. So apparently they think my vote is irrelevant, and if they think my vote is irrelevant, I think I'm going to end up voting for Steve Grossman, who will obviously be on my Saturday show at some point in the future. But I also want to have. Look, I'm going to be voting in the primary for Attorney General. I'm going to be voting for State Representative. I'm pulling a Democrat ballot because I want to make sure that I get a vote in for Diana DeZoglio for State Rep and Katie Eyes for State Senate. Two Democrats that I very much like. But I'm going to be voting for governor. And if I don't hear from Martha Coakley, if she doesn't think my tweaking her on Twitter and my opinions and what I throw out at her, if she doesn't think that's important enough to at least pay attention to and respond to, I guess I'm going with Steve Grossman. Is there a primary for Secretary of State Galvin this year? Isn't that amazing? Has he ever had a primary candidate?
Yes.
Oh, he has. When was that?
A couple of years ago,
Yeah.
I believe there was a fellow that came out of the western part of the state. I forget the fellow's name, but he did have a candidate against him.
I know he had a Republican candidate named Campbell. He's the Woburn City Clerk, right? Is it Don Campbell? If I'm remembering right?
Bill Campbell.
Bill Campbell, yeah, I'm terrible with names. Right, you'd think being in the media I'd be better at that. And he had no shot going in.
Well, if he's had all these races, why hasn't he debated anybody in over 12 years?
Can you ask the question again? Your mic wasn't on because I'm an idiot.
Yeah, we've been trying to ascertain the last time he debated somebody. It seems like he hasn't debated anybody in over 12 years. So
Why should he?
Because he's a public servant.
No, he's doing a good job, and people don't want to hear any more. I mean, all these debates. I hate hearing the debates because I already know who I'm going to vote for.
Yeah. But what about all those people who don't, George?
Well, they should catch up on your media, on the Valley page.
That's a great answer. He's getting better. Dave, you've spent a lot of time in the first half hour talking about what you would do differently than Bill Galvin, or what he did wrong. What will you do differently? And are there things that he has done that you think are good that you would continue doing if you win? I mean, he might be the Darth Vader of politics, but I'm sure there's things that he's done as Secretary of State that are good.
Darth Vader. Stop that nonsense.
yeah, he's well. I didn't give him his nickname up at the State House. People up at the State House know what his nickname is. I didn't name him that. So
Come on.
But
You
yeah,
Republicans
really.
are
I mean,
all
this
alike.
really isn't even about Bill Galvin, right? Because all he's done is basically be a placeholder. He really hasn't advanced the position at all. He really hasn't rolled up his sleeves. I mean, we can't get basic documents out of him, right? And then when we appeal to him, he's the person we have to appeal to.
Right.
It's just the whole thing is just crazy, and it's politics as usual. It's typical Beacon Hill. I'm running against the face of Beacon Hill. Think about it. He's been there for 20 years,
Republican answer.
his entire adult life. And if you want things to change, well, then you got to vote for me. If you want things to stay the same and everybody to shrug their shoulders and nothing to see here, and kids keep going missing from the DCF, and drug compounding scandals keep happening, and nothing to see here, shrug your shoulders, then vote for him. It's that simple. But if you
No,
want,
it's not that simple.
if you
you're
want,
you're making it that simple.
it's that simple. You really have
What's he got to do with drugs?
You haven't cited any data that indicates he's improved the office. You're saying he's doing a good job. Under what metric is he doing a good
that's
job?
That's Steve Bedore answer. Steve Bedore says everyone's doing a good job.
Because you talk to people who interface with all of the divisions of that office, whether it be Securities and Exchange, those people are very upset with Bill Galvin, and that affects you and your 401k.
George, you're a veteran, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, so because of Bill Galvin, those guys that are out in Afghanistan right now getting shot at by Muslim terrorists, their ballot is no longer secret, because the only way, thanks to Bill Galvin, the only way they can vote in the next Massachusetts election is if they sign a waiver of confidentiality of their ballot and vote by email. Thanks to Bill Galvin. And here's what he didn't want to do. What the National Organization for Women locally and what some of the local voters' rights organizations want is to move the primary to the springtime, like other states do, so that there's a longer time between the primary and the final election, so that those overseas ballots, those physical ballots for absentee voters who are in the military, maybe they're not in the military, maybe they're just an American who's living in Germany on business, their vote should count too. And what Bill Galvin said was, no, we don't want to move the primary. What we're going to do is we're going to force our military. Now imagine this in an Obama environment where retribution of the federal government is rampant. We're going to tell our military soldiers that they're going to have to give up their right of a secret ballot so that their commanders and the politicians will know who they voted for. Shameful for Bill Galvin to do that. Shameful. He might be a nice guy, but that's shameful.
And here's why it's outrageous, George. It's outrageous because the technology exists to be able to have these individuals vote securely and maintain their integrity of secret ballot. So the technology exists. In Massachusetts, we need to be leaders. It's supposed to be Beacon Hill. We're supposed to be a beacon. We're supposed to be leading the country in this stuff. Instead, contrary to what you're saying, we got an F, a grade of F, the worst possible grade of F. We're third or fourth from the bottom in terms of all 50 states when it comes to transparency in government. Don't just believe me. Look at the National Association of Freedom of Information Coalitions, a nonpartisan watchdog group. Okay? So you can go to my website, davin2014.com, to check it out. Again, freedom of information, Massachusetts is one of the worst in the country. We get a grade of F. So you can say all you want, oh, he's doing a good job. That is just not true, especially when it comes to something as important.
I don't care. I would tell you exactly who I'd vote for.
That's you, but everybody deserves the right to be able to say if they want to be able to vote by secret ballot or not. And why should we extend that right to some and not everybody? If you're going to do it to one, you got to do it to everybody, especially those in our service, those servicemen and women that are serving for us bravely overseas. They're putting their lives on the line, and we can't even go out of our way to make sure that their vote is handled with the same integrity. That's not right. And under my leadership, that will change.
978.
What would you change it to?
Yeah, how would you change it, Dave?
I would introduce technology. There's secure voting technology.
Technology is technology.
We're going to be coming out with it.
He's already done an awful lot of that.
No, he has not.
Yeah.
No, he has not. Let me tell you what happened with the PD-43, for example. The PD-43s were never online, okay?
And just remind people what that is.
The PD-43 stands for Public Document 43. That is the official tally and really shows you how all of the people voted. So it's the election results, essentially. So for years, that wasn't online. And then what happened? He didn't put it online. You had a private individual, and there was an article about this, the gentleman's name is Adam, who came along, and a private individual took it upon himself to enter in all that information. He used technology to scan it all in and then to put it all in, right? And handed it to the Secretary of State's office. And what does Bill Galvin do? He comes in and takes credit for that, and now all the PD-43s are online. No, he didn't take credit. That was a private initiative. Now, had he tried to, done an RFP and have that out, it probably would have been like the Health Connector website, where we spent $53 million and the thing didn't even work. That's what happens when you get government involved. And again, I'd like to be able to tell you an exact number, George, but we've asked for that data, and he won't tell us. He won't come clean with the people's document.
Maybe it doesn't exist.
Again, I don't know what's worse. He's the keeper of records. I don't know what's worse. The fact that he doesn't have the records and can't provide them easily, or the fact that he won't provide them.
Right.
Either example is not allowable to the voters of Massachusetts. You deserve better.
That's a non-issue. That really is a non-issue.
That's a huge
I don't know who
issue.
you're talking to. It's a major issue to the people I'm
but
talking
he's
to.
right about one thing. George is right. It's not a political issue because there is no group to pander to that will give you money for your campaign if you talk about that issue. Like if it was abortion, there'd be a ton of people lining up to write you a check. All you got to do is mention it. But it's not a political issue because it's not in the best interest of a politician. It doesn't profit a politician.
Let me ask you
by
this,
talking about
George.
those issues.
Let me ask you this, George.
So George is right about that.
And I want listeners to call in. What listener out there believes that the NSA spying is a good thing? What listener out there believes that the IRS erasing hard drives and, oh, we can't find the emails is a good thing? Nobody. Nobody thinks that. So you're trying to defend the indefensible because what we have going on here is not that much different. I submitted public records requests 78 days ago asking rudimentary questions. How much did it cost to produce the ads? How much did it cost to air the ads? How many ads have you been in? What is the date they aired on? That is rudimentary information. And he won't provide it. He's stonewalling.
George, I'm curious. I mean, if someone's a public official, I don't care what position they hold, I don't even care who they are, let's just call him Bill Jones. Bill Jones is a public official. And you as a citizen go to him and say, under the public records law, I want you to show me how much money did you spend on pencils in your office for the last 5 years? Should it not be an easy push? You go to the computer, you type in pencils, expenses, and you print it out and you hand it to the member of the public so the public knows how you're spending their money? Like, shouldn't it just be that simple? In the age where I can go on my computer right now and see live pictures of Mars, which is a different flipping planet, I can't go to the Secretary of State's office and find out how much he spent on pencils.
Sure you can.
No, you can't.
That's the whole point.
That's the whole point. And now here's the other thing that's even more...
And we want the answer to be yes, but the answer isn't yes.
Absolutely. And the thing that's even more egregious...
Wait a minute. First of all, my understanding is they have to file. Every candidate has to file his expenses.
Tell that to Willie Lantigua.
Well, we're not talking about candidate. We're talking about other public expenditures,
Why do you change the issue on?
Well, it's not the same issue. Willie Lantigua never filed. So you say, because there's a law that says you have to do something, therefore people are doing it. But we know people aren't doing it, and it's not being enforced.
Here's the thing to me that's most...
I can't help you.
Here's the thing to me that's most egregious.
That's why the documents don't exist.
One of the answers he's given back to us is, oh, but you're asking so many questions. Just ask a very narrow question, and we'll see if we can comply. That is outrageous. How do I know what questions to ask until you provide me the documents? Right. So he sets up this catch-22 craziness. Just provide the documents. Come clean. He doesn't want to come clean.
Why are you on a fishing trip? Why don't you tell him exactly what you want?
I did. I'm trying to ascertain.
Here's what he wants. Read my editorial. What he wants is, in the last election, Bill Galvin ran public service announcements on television during the election up to and including Election Day. Mr. D'Angelo wants to know, how much did that cost us? How much did it cost the taxpayers for you to run a fake public service announcement while your name was on the ballot on Election Day?
Well, just to be clear,
it as fake.
Well, it is fake.
Just to be clear, and not to go over what you're saying, Tom, but just to be clear, what specifically I'm asking for. My initial request, I've asked for, how many commercials have you appeared in? What are the date of those? Because I don't know if he appeared last election. I'm not maintaining...
He did. I watched the commercial.
That's fine. You can maintain that. But what I'm saying, just for listeners out there, and I'm sure there's plenty of Democrat operatives that would love to dig into me for that. What I am saying, David Darkangel, what I'm asking is, when have you appeared in these PSAs? Give me the dates. How many PSAs have you been in? Have you been in all of them? Have you appeared in all of them? Right? How much did it cost to produce these? How much did it cost to air them?
Right.
Again, George, rudimentary questions that he doesn't want to answer. He's stonewalling, and what his answer back is, oh, you're trying to go back. You're trying to find everything. You're looking for 19 years worth of stuff. We don't even know if that exists. Wait a minute. You're supposed to be the custodian of records. So again, that goes to what I'm saying. I don't know what's worse, the fact that they don't have the records or can't find the records.
That's all trivia.
No, it isn't. This isn't office supplies we're talking about. This is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of expenditures here.
Don't you think it would be under a category of advertisement?
Right, you would think.
So just pull it.
Okay,
it's astonishing to me. It's astonishing to me.
It doesn't give you a breakdown of how many
Sure it
days.
would. If you've ever done an ad buy, you know that ad buy you receipt you get, it tells you when the ad aired, how long it was, where it aired.
Do you save those receipts?
Of course you have to. If
Why?
you're a,
George, what would
if you're
happen
a
if you
public
didn't-
official, you have to.
George, what would happen if you declared on your taxes $10,000 in expenses for, I don't know, you put in a new pool, and you write it off on your taxes, and the IRS comes and says, hey, 5 years ago you put in a pool and you got the expense. Where's your receipts? What would happen if you said I don't have them? I don't know where they are. I'm gonna have to. I don't know. It's Ripley's. Who could believe it? I don't save those things.
That's right.
What would happen? They'd fine you. You'd lose the deduction, and you might even go to jail for fraud.
No.
So this is what we're saying.
I would go back to the company.
You'd go back to what, the pool company?
Yeah.
What if they went out of business?
Well,
Well,
so
wait,
be it.
but wait.
But with the
you
state,
gotta-
shouldn't you be able to go back? It's astonishing to me that such significant expenditures, there's not some file cabinet somewhere in the Secretary of State's office. Like, shame on them. What kind of records are they keeping that they can't walk over and say, okay, here's the PSA file, here's the ones that we ran on this day? Because I don't know, Tom.
Right.
I don't know when. I know he was running PSAs last year. I don't know if he was running them in 2010. That's one of the things we're trying to find out. When did he run these ads?
So
he
you're
won't
really
answer us.
on a fishing trip.
For the people deserve to know. And here's the other thing.
Are the people
He came
asking?
back to me.
Yes,
Yes,
no,
What's
absolutely.
wrong,
The
George,
people
what's
asking.
wrong with a fishing trip? As a member of the public, shouldn't I have the right to go on a fishing trip to find out what my government's spending my money on?
Absolutely. And
I mean,
here's the other
if
thing.
you have a daughter and you give her an allowance and you sit her down and start asking her where she's spending her allowance money because you gave it to her, don't you have the right to go on that fishing trip?
I know we're up against a
Not
break
really.
here. Let me just get this in, right? So, just to recap for the listeners out there. So, 78 days ago, I sent Bill Galvin a records request. He sent me back a letter. Actually, he didn't even send me a letter back. He sent the letter to the State House News Service. Okay? He didn't even send it back to me. He sent it to the State House News Service saying, "Oh, Mr. D'Arcangelo, you've sent your letter to the wrong place." So, I sent him another letter to the right place. So, then he responded saying, "Oh, well, we don't know about this. We'll get back to you." So then I sent him another letter, and then he sent me back another letter, right? And in between, we're trying to call, we're trying to email. So finally, he gets back to me, and he says, well, you know, this is kind of open, and we don't know about 19 years, and we don't even know if the records exist, but we'll provide you with the records that we have for $5,300. So he wants to charge me, he wants to charge you, the public, $5,300 to come up with your records. And here's the thing, as Tom Duggan knows, in the public records law and in the regulations, it provides that he can waive that fee if it's in the public interest. So what he's saying, George, is no, it's not in the public interest to know how much I spent on these PSAs that promote myself. And, oh, by the way, don't just believe me. Read the Associated Press story that quotes a Democrat operative, not a Republican operative, not my campaign, the Associated Press story that quotes a Democrat campaign operative of saying that Bill Galvin airing these PSAs is nothing more than campaigning on the taxpayer's dime.
And I totally agree with that. Listen, we have to wrap this up. How can people get in touch with you if they want to work on your campaign, they want to make a donation? What's your website? What's all that stuff?
Well, again, George, been great talking to you. Tommy, thanks for having me on. Thanks for WCAP and all the listeners.
Make sure you're
here.
buying advertising in the Valley Patriot come election time. That's all I'm going to
And
tell you.
CAP.
We need as much.
That's right. We have to make sure CB. Don't go through Jerry Lauderdale, though. Go directly through Sam.
We need as much support as we can get, and we're running an active campaign. Our message is really resonating. It's resonating with Democrats, Republicans, and unenrolled because people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they want new leadership on Beacon Hill. They want to restore viable two-party government on Beacon Hill and put the checks and balances in place that will hold our government accountable. My name is David D'Arcangelo. I'm running for Secretary of State. I need your vote in November, and I need your support. You can go to my website, davein2014.com, to find out more. Davein2014 to find out more. Thanks so much. Great debate. Hope to be back on WCAP soon. Thanks so much.
We want to thank our sponsors, Pentucket Medical Associates at Merrimack Street in Lawrence. Merrimack Street Convenience, which actually is no longer, you got to cross this off the list, they closed. Coffee Can on Merrimack Street in Lawrence, and of course Big Decisions LLC. I'm Tom Duggan. You can listen to my show on Saturdays from 10 to noon, and you can pick up your copy of the Valley Patriot as it is being delivered today and tomorrow in Lowell. But it is also has been delivered Methuen, Haverhill, North Andover, the rest of the Merrimack Valley yesterday. Thank you, George Zaharoulis. It's been an amazing ride with you today, George. I have tremendous respect for you. I have tremendous respect for you, even though I don't agree with you on anything.
Yeah, exactly. Same here.
Thank you, George. That's Melvin Taylor. He's from right here in Lowell,
Good job.
singing a song about the weather. And he's telling you to go home, so go home already. And make sure you keep your radio on 980 WCAP, where everybody gets it. Even Dave D'Angelo.
Can I have my little...